Bright light floods my eyes as the surgical lamp hovers above me. The table is cold under my shoulder blades, and the heart monitor keeps time with a stubborn beep that feels louder than my thoughts. I lie still because the straps tell me to. Because a nurse with calm eyes has pasted sensors along my ribs. Because my son needs a kidney and they say mine fits like a key in a lock. I am Margaret Whitfield, 66, a retired seamstress from Louisville. Through the glass, Claudia stands with her parents as if posing for a portrait that does not include me. Her arms are folded, jaw lifted, a look that says there is only one acceptable choice. Her mother leans in to whisper, and her father nods as if business has been settled. They were kind once. When Daniel was strong and loud and came home smelling like sun and cedar from the job site, now he is pale, waiting in the next room with IV lines and a brave face that undoes me. Dr. Dodd. Evans adjusts his mask and reviews my chart, voice steady as he explains the steps I have already memorized. Anesthesia first, incision, retrieval, sutures. He speaks like a metronome. The nurse swabs my arm. I watch the clear syringe glint, then drift to the ceiling tiles with tiny cracks like veins in marble. I try to breathe through the chill, through the silence I have kept for months, through the doubt that arrived like fog and would not lift. Ethan told me to wait. He said something is wrong, that Claudia manages every pill, every spoonful, every word that reaches Daniel. He showed me photos of a parking lot exchange. I could not make myself believe. And Leo, only 10, asked me what happens when someone is made sick on purpose. I laughed it off and told him, worry is a shadow that grows when you feed it. But the shadow is here, stretched across the stainless steel. Claudia catches my eye and tilts her head toward the clipboard a nurse is holding. Sign it, she mouths, and I feel the tug of a lifetime of mothering. The muscle memory of saying yes before anyone finishes asking. I think of our narrow shotgun house in Smoketown, the hiss of the iron, the soft rasp of chalk on fabric, the nights I sewed until the birds began. I think of Daniel as a boy balancing on the curb, arms wide, promising he could fly. Love is why I am here. Love and the fear of losing him. The syringe touches my skin. The air smells like antiseptic and winter. My pulse climbs the beeping ladder. The doors bang open. A small body in muddy sneakers rushes through the cold light. Grandma, Leo says, standing at my side with a cracked phone clenched in both hands. I have to tell them the truth about why my dad really needs your kidney today. Please, now. The moment Leo's trembling voice fills the operating room, the scene freezes in my mind like a photograph. Doctors glance at each other. The nurse lowers the syringe. And even Dr. South. Evans pauses mid-sentence. I want to reach for my grandson, but the straps pin me down. My throat burns with questions. I cannot speak. And then, as if a curtain is pulled back, memory drags me to where this all began. Back to our small brick house in Louisville's Germantown neighborhood, where the windows fog in winter and the smell of boiled beans lingers in the walls. That house raised my boys. It was where Daniel, the eldest, learned to balance tools on his shoulder before most kids his age could ride a bike. Where Ethan, my younger one, filled the air with the smell of solder and grease as he fixed radios for neighbors. Life was never easy after my husband passed. He was a machinist, gone too soon in an accident at the factory. I kept food on the table with a needle and thread. Seams and hems, curtains and wedding dresses, anything the people of Louisville needed. I sewed until my fingers cracked. I promised myself my sons would not know the ache of hunger I carried as a girl. Daniel was my pride. Tall, broad-shouldered, laughing as if he could shake the roof. He built houses, carried bricks, always had dust on his boots. But a year ago, he began to falter. First, it was fatigue, then the coughing, then the blood in his urine. I held his hand when the doctor said kidney failure. My world narrowed to a single word: transplant. That was when Claudia tightened her grip on him. She arrived in our family like warm spring air, with soft hands and sweet promises. At first, I thought she was a blessing. She brought soup when Daniel coughed, lined up his medicine bottles, and spoke to nurses with practiced calm. But soon, her care became control. She locked the cabinet where she kept his pills. She corrected my every move, saying I was too old, too clumsy. Daniel defended her gently, too tired to argue. Then Claudia's parents, the Harpers, arrived. Tall, sharp, moneyed. They carried themselves as if our home were a stage beneath them. One evening, they sat in my living room, sipping tea from my chipped cups, and spoke in unison. A mother's duty is to sacrifice. Mr. Harper said, adjusting his gold watch. It is your responsibility, Mrs. Whitfield, to give your son life again. Mrs. DIL. Harper leaned closer, her perfume choking the room. If you hesitate, people will whisper. They will say you let your own son waste away. What kind of mother does that? Daniel sat propped against the couch cushion, eyes hollow, whispering, Mom, I trust you. You'll save me. My heart cracked. Ethan clenched his fists in the corner, but said nothing. From that night on, the pressure became a vice. Claudia called daily, repeating the words duty, honor, responsibility. Her parents visited often, filling my house with judgment and demands. And I, seamstress, widow, mother, felt myself shrinking. Now, under the surgical lamp, I see it clearly. Every whispered word, every icy glance, every hand pushing me closer to this table. Love for Daniel brought me here. Yes, but also fear. Fear of being called unworthy. Fear of being shamed. And still, Leo stands by me, small chest heaving, clutching the phone like a shield. Grandma, he says again, his voice steadier now. I have to tell them everything. The operating room holds its breath. The weeks before the surgery play in my mind like scenes on an old film reel, each frame heavier than the last. After that family meeting in my living room, silence became unbearable. Every creak of the floorboards, every ticking clock reminded me of the Harper's words, a mother's duty. My son's hollow eyes haunted me, but it was Ethan's quiet warning that kept echoing in my chest. He had always been the quieter one, careful with words, but when he spoke, it carried weight. One night, he pulled me aside in the kitchen, his hands still rough from repairing wiring all day. Mom, he whispered, Claudia is hiding something. I saw bottles in Daniel's cabinet without labels. Pills I've never seen before. She keeps them tucked behind his prescribed medication. The spoon slipped from my hand into the sink. My first instinct was to deny it, to protect the fragile idea that Daniel's wife loved him. You must be mistaken, I said, forcing a weak smile. But Ethan's dark eyes did not waver. Then there was Leo. Children have a way of seeing truths adults tried to bury. One afternoon he sat on my front porch, knees scraped, toy car rolling between his palms. Grandma, he asked softly, what if somebody makes another person sick on purpose? Like giving them the wrong medicine? His words pierced me more deeply than any scalpel could. I reached for his hair, ruffled it, and forced a laugh. That only happens in stories. Sweetheart, don't worry. But inside, my heart stumbled. At dinner the following week, Claudia presided like a conductor in front of her orchestra. She served Daniel herself, spooning soup into his bowl, watching until he swallowed each spoonful. Every eye in the room followed her. Mr. Red, Harper raised a glass, praising her as the most devoted wife Louisville had ever known. Mrs. Proper 80. Harper dabbed her lips with a napkin and said pointedly, "Some women spend their lives sewing scraps together. Others save lives." The insult burned, but I lowered my eyes to my plate. Daniel looked so thin, his cheekbones sharp as if carved by grief itself. When his gaze met mine, it wasn't suspicion I saw. It was trust absolute, childlike trust. That was what trapped me more than their words. But shadows lingered. I began noticing whispers at night. I would wake for water and hear Claudia's voice slipping under the crack of their door. "After the transplant, the results will be perfect." Her tone was clipped, hurried. One evening, when I stepped into the hall, the door opened suddenly. Claudia startled, phone still glowing in her hand. She laughed quickly. "Oh, just talking to the doctor. Mom, you worry too much." I tried to believe her. I told myself exhaustion was making me suspicious, that grief over Daniel's illness was twisting my thoughts. But the unease kept growing, curling around me like ivy choking an old wall. And still, every time Daniel whispered, "Mom, you'll save me," I nodded. My soul trembled, but I nodded. The unease soon became impossible to ignore. Ethan, ever watchful, decided he could not stay silent. One gray afternoon he came to my house, grease still on his shirt from repairing a water heater. He laid his phone on the table, his hands shaking slightly. "Mom, look at this." The photos were grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. Claudia stood in the hospital parking lot. In one frame, she pulled a small white cooler from her trunk. In the next, she handed it to a man in a black jacket and cap. The man gave her an envelope in return. Claudia's eyes darted around, sharp, nervous, as if she knew she was trespassing on forbidden ground. My blood ran cold. "What is this?" I whispered. Ethan's jaw clenched. "It's not vitamins or medicine for Daniel. She's hiding something. And it's not for his health." Later that week, I tried to confront her. In Daniel's hospital room, a small plastic bottle half buried under a napkin caught my eye. No label, just a cheap white cap. When I picked it up, Claudia spun around, snatching it so quickly her nails scratched my skin. "They're supplements," she said with a brittle smile. The doctor approved them. Her eyes dared me to argue. That night, Leo appeared with his school bag sagging off his shoulder. He dug out an old cell phone. The screen cracked in a spiderweb pattern. "Grandma," he whispered, "you need to hear this." He pressed play. Claudia's voice filled my kitchen, low but distinct. "After the transplant, the results will be worth millions. Don't worry. She won't dare refuse. The old woman doesn't have a choice." The words stabbed through me. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, the laminate biting into my palms. Leo's eyes were wide, uncertain, but full of courage. "I found it on Mom's old phone," he said. "I don't know what it means, but I thought you should know." I pulled him into my arms, trembling. The recording replayed in my mind. Results. Millions. No choice. It was no longer a shadow. It was a storm, dark and undeniable. But the next morning, when I brought soup to Daniel, his face lit up weakly. "Mom, you're the only one who can save me." His trust was a chain binding me to silence. Could I accuse his wife, the mother of his child, when he clung to her as his lifeline? I returned home that evening with a heart like a cracked vessel, every step heavier than the last. The puzzle pieces, Ethan's photos, the unlabeled bottle, Claudia's whispered calls. Leo's recording slid into place, painting an image I could no longer ignore. Still, I told myself one lie to survive. Perhaps I was mistaken. Perhaps love had blinded me. But deep down, I knew. The truth was crouching just ahead, waiting to strike. The night of the family council arrived like a storm. I could not stop. My living room, small and worn from years of use, filled with people who acted as if it belonged to them. The Harpers sat in the two best chairs, Claudia between them, her silk blouse catching the lamplight. Daniel lay on the sofa, pale as paper, a thin blanket pulled to his chest. Ethan leaned against the wall, silent, his jaw tight. Little Leo sat cross-legged in the corner, clutching his backpack as if it were armor. I set a teapot on the table, the steam carrying the scent of mint. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the cups. Mr. Obus. Harper cleared his throat, his voice carrying the authority of a man used to boardrooms, not kitchens. It is decided, he announced, looking directly at me. Tomorrow, the hospital will schedule the operation. You will donate your kidney. Mrs. Jennery. Whitfield. Your son's life depends on it. Mrs. BK. Harper leaned forward, eyes gleaming. And when it's done, people will finally see you as a true mother. Not a tired seamstress. A woman who gave her own body to save her bloodline. Daniel's hollow voice cracked the air. Mom, I know you'll do it. You've always been there for me. His gaze was trusting, desperate, a knife to my heart. Claudia dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her hands, clasped tight in her lap, trembled not with sorrow, but with something colder. Triumph. Thank you. Margaret, she whispered, though the words felt rehearsed, staged. The room pressed in on me. My chest heaved. I wanted to scream, to shout the truth Leo had shown me, the photos Ethan had taken. But the weight of Daniel's need smothered my voice. Finally, I forced the words out. "I'll do it," I said, barely louder than a whisper. The Harpers erupted in praise. "A real mother, Mrs. Market," Harper declared. "We knew you would not fail." Claudia bowed her head, sobbing harder, though I caught the way her lips curved, just for a second. Ethan slammed his fist on the table, the cups rattling. "No, can't you see? This is all wrong." His voice shook with fury. He pointed straight at Claudia. "You've been poisoning him. Those bottles, those secret meetings, this is your plan. You want Mom on that table because it serves you, not Daniel." The room fell silent except for the hum of the old refrigerator. Claudia leapt to her feet, eyes blazing. "How dare you? Everything I do is for my husband." Her voice cracked, but her hands balled into fists. Daniel turned his head weakly. "Ethan, stop. Please." I stood there, frozen, torn between my sons, between the boy who trusted me with his life and the one begging me to see the truth. My lips moved, but no sound came out. That night, after everyone left, I sat at my kitchen table under the weak light of a lamp. I pulled out a sheet of paper, my hand trembling as I wrote. A will. The little house would go to Ethan. The few heirlooms to Leo. If I did not survive, at least they would have something of me. As I folded the paper and slid it into an old wooden box, the rain tapped against the windows like fingers urging me to wake up. But I was already trapped in a story I could not escape. Morning came cloaked in fog. The ambulance arrived before dawn, its red lights flashing across the cracked sidewalk outside my little house in Louisville. I climbed onto the gurney, clutching a fabric pouch that held a spare gown, my wedding handkerchief, and the will I had written the night before. The wheels squeaked as they rolled me inside, the sound sharp against the hollow stillness of the street. Claudia followed close behind, heels clicking like a metronome of control. She leaned down to whisper, her breath warm and sharp in my ear. "After this, everything will finally be fine. Don't think too much. Margaret, Her words felt less like comfort and more like command. At the hospital entrance, her parents were waiting. Mr. X's, Harper in his polished gray suit. Mrs. Bry, Harper in a red dress too bright for the hour. They greeted the staff with forced cheer, shaking hands, laughing as if this were a gala and not a surgery that could end my life. I shivered as I watched Mrs. Element. Harper slip a white envelope into the hand of a man in a dark jacket near the reception desk. He tucked it into his pocket without a word. Ethan rushed in moments later, sweat soaking his collar, his palms smeared with grease from a job he had abandoned. He grabbed my arm as the gurney paused. "Mom, please don't do this. Look again at the photos. Look at what Leo found. You're walking into their trap." His voice cracked, trembling with fear and fury. I wanted to answer, to tell him he was wrong, that Claudia wouldn't harm Daniel. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. I only squeezed his hand, tears burning my eyes. The nurse pushed me forward, separating us. Ethan's voice echoed down the hallway. "Mom, listen to me." I dared not turn back. The corridor smelled of bleach, the kind that burns the inside of your nose. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, as if even the building doubted what was about to happen. They guided me into a preparation room. A nurse tied the blue gown at my back, pressed a cap over my hair. My reflection in the stainless steel cabinet looked ghostly. Pale skin, dark circles, eyes brimming with fear. I whispered to myself, "Margaret, you're doing this for Daniel. Hold steady." But the lie caught in my throat. As they wheeled me toward the operating theater, I saw Claudia through a window, speaking quickly to the man in the black jacket. She pressed something into his hand, a second envelope. He nodded once and vanished down the corridor. Claudia turned and met my eyes, her lips curling into a thin smile. Victory. My pulse hammered in my ears. The straps clicked shut around my wrists as they positioned me beneath the surgical lights. The nurse readied the anesthesia. "Doctor." Evance's calm voice floated above me. "Everything is prepared. Just relax." But how could I relax? When every sign told me I was being led to my own undoing, the surgical lamp burned down like a second sun, its glare making my eyes water. My pulse spiked with each beep of the monitor. A nurse swabbed my arm, the scent of alcohol stinging my nose. The syringe gleamed above me, a silver dart ready to plunge me into darkness. I whispered a prayer inside my head, short, desperate, unfinished. Then the door crashed open. The sound ripped through the sterile air, followed by hurried footsteps and a child's voice, sharp and trembling. "Grandma!" Leo, my little grandson, burst into the operating room, sneakers muddy, shirt half untucked, chest heaving like he had sprinted through the whole hospital. Behind him, a nurse shouted, "Stop. You can't be here." But he darted past her, straight to my side, in his hands. The cracked old phone shook, but his voice did not. "I have to tell everyone why my dad really needs your kidney." Every doctor froze. The syringe halted midair. Metal instruments rattled as someone's hand slipped. "Doctor?" Evans raised his palm. "Let the boy speak." Through the glass wall, Claudia slammed her fists against the pane, her voice shrill. "Don't listen to him. He's just a child." Her face was pale now, the mask of control slipping. Leo's little fingers tapped the phone. A recording filled the room. Claudia's voice, whispering but clear. "After the transplant, the results will be worth millions. She won't dare refuse. The old woman has no choice." The words echoed like a hammer blow. Gasps rippled through the staff. My chest tightened, not from fear this time, but from the sharp sting of truth. "Doctor," Evan's jaw clenched. "Stop all preparations. Now." Nurses stepped back. one lowering the syringe to the tray with shaking hands. But Leo wasn't done. Tears streaked his cheeks as he held the phone higher. There's more. He pressed play again. On the screen, grainy video, Claudia and Mrs. starting. Harper in the hospital parking lot, handing a cooler to the man in the black jacket. Mrs. righted. Harper's voice carried cold and clear. After this operation, well, have enough data to sell the medicine abroad. This money will change everything. The room erupted. A nurse covered her mouth in horror. Another muttered, "My God." The door behind Claudia burst open. Ethan stormed in, eyes red, fury in every step. He pointed at Claudia through the glass. "You poisoned him. You thought we'd all stay blind." His voice cracked but did not waver. Claudia shrieked, pounding on the glass, mascara streaking down her face. It's lies, all lies, but her terror betrayed her. Dr. in Timbuktu. Evans turned to security, his voice like steel. "This is no longer surgery. This is a crime scene. Call the police." And as the chaos swirled around me, doctors shouting, nurses scrambling, Claudia screaming, I lay there, tears streaming, staring at Leo. My little grandson who had burst through doors and risked everything to save me. To save us all. They wheeled me out of the operating room in silence. My hands still shook, but the straps were gone, and so was the weight pressing on my chest. Outside, Claudia's screams echoed down the hallway, shrill and broken, as hospital security restrained her and her parents. Mrs. Redder. Harper swung her cane wildly, shouting that I had ruined everything. Mr. Bland. Harper's face, once smug, now sagged with fear as he muttered about lawyers. Doctor. Evans walked beside my gurney, his voice steady but his eyes fierce. Mrs. Redder. Whitfield. The transplant is canceled. Daniel will begin dialysis immediately. We will also adjust his medications. You saved more than your own life today. You saved his. Those words should have felt like a victory. Yet they tore at my heart. Because in the next room, my eldest son lay unaware that the woman he loved, the mother of his child, had betrayed him for profit. When I entered his recovery room, Daniel tried to sit up, his face pale and confused. Mom, what's happening? Why is Claudia screaming? Tell me. She didn't, his voice broke. I sat on the edge of his bed, took his hand in both of mine, and let the tears flow. Daniel, the truth is hard, but you need to hear it. Claudia and her parents were hurting you. They wanted my kidney not to save you, but to sell results from your pain. His eyes filled with tears, spilling down his cheeks. He shook his head, whispering, No, she couldn't. I trusted her. He buried his face in his hands. And in that moment, I saw the strong boy I raised crumbling. I held him, rocking him gently as if he were still a child. You are not alone, son. Ethan and I will protect you now. Ethan entered quietly, placing a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder. Well, get through this together. For the first time in weeks, Daniel looked at his younger brother and nodded. A fragile bridge of trust began to form between them again. News spread quickly. Louisville's papers ran headlines, Pharmaceutical Black Market Scheme Uncovered at Hospital. Photos of Claudia and the Harpers in handcuffs filled the front page. Reporters wrote about experimental drugs, falsified trials, and the greed that nearly cost lives. Neighbors whispered outside my fence, some shaking their heads, others offering quiet prayers. Through it all, Leo became the quiet hero. The boy who had run into the operating room with muddy shoes and a cracked phone was now the reason the truth had surfaced. One evening, he climbed onto my lap, his small arms circling my neck. I was scared. Grandma, he whispered. But I couldn't let them hurt you. I kissed his forehead, tears wetting his hair. You are braver than men, 3 times your age," I told him. His shy smile was the first light I had seen in days. At home, I opened my old diary by the kitchen window, the smell of sewing thread and mint tea still clinging to the air. I wrote, "Blood alone does not make a family. Loyalty, courage, and truth do." I nearly let silence destroy me, but the voice of a child pulled me back. From now on, I will never close my eyes to shadows, no matter how close they stand. So here is my lesson. To anyone who hears my story, silence may keep peace for a moment, but courage saves lives for generations. If even a 10-year-old boy can speak up against lies, so can you. When I look back at everything that happened, I realize silence nearly cost me everything. Love for my son blinded me, but it was the courage of a child that forced the truth into the light. I learned that family is not defined by blood alone. It is built on loyalty, honesty, and the will to protect one another. Claudia and her parents tried to use me as a pawn, but they underestimated the power of truth. My grandson's bravery reminded me that even the smallest voice can stop the darkest lies. If my story reaches you, remember this: do not ignore your instincts, and do not let fear silence you. Speaking up may feel terrifying, but it can save lives. What about you? What lesson do you take from my story? And from which city are you listening today?